The Michigan Magazine Museum was established back in 1998 as a nonprofit museum dedicated to spotlighting the many fascinating stories that have been featured on the Michigan Magazine television series. The television show has been in existence since 1989, being conceived and developed by a couple of down-home Michigan men, Del Vaughn and myself, Barry Stutzman. We felt there were stories along Michigan's back roads that needed to be brought to the attention of other Michiganians. The good news of Michigan had to be told. There was inspiration and an undying spirit among us Michigan commoners that was going unnoticed, pushed aside to make room for disparaging news headlines. This spirit was making dreams everyday reality. With our weekly television travels eventually spawning this museum that's drawn hundreds of thousands of guests and visitors through its doors to celebrate the Michigan spirit, we've come to realize that sometimes there are stories that need to be told, that even though it spotlights a Michigan tragedy, it also brings to light the love Michiganders have for their home state. A love that brings out an extremely protective side that's willing to go to battle when our beautiful state is threatened. In September of 2006, the Michigan Magazine Museum, under the direction of our curator, Nelson Yoder, presented a photographic retrospective of the tragic PBB chemical disaster of the 1970s through the lens of journalist and newspaper publisher, the late Jim Davison. This was the first exhibit of its kind that documents a chemical mix-up that tainted cattle feed, resulting in the destruction of thousands of Michigan cattle, and a protest here in Oscoda County that brought citizens to the point of hanging their own governor in effigy. The protest was one of concern that the state government, without the consent of its citizenry, was planning to bury the contaminated cattle carcasses in huge, clay-lined pits, literally just out their own back door. The state government tried to reassure the locals that there was no health risk and that the pits would contain the contamination. The citizens didn't believe or trust what they were being told. The consensus among a select group of protesters was that the government was ignoring the concerns of the people. This exhibit documents in photos, books, and memorabilia the passion and concern that created a protest heard around the world and a part of history known to many as the poisoning of Michigan. As our exhibit opened on this September morning, guests and visitors filed through the doors to view the exhibit. There were representatives present on both sides of the argument in attendance, including protester Cecilia Neff of Cummins, Michigan, who reminisced with us about the PBB disaster of the 70s that still concerns her. It's been, almost 30 years now?
It is.
Any comments maybe about the exhibit, or?
I think the exhibit is remarkable, and we have to thank Jim for that. Because he took those wonderful pictures and kept them.
Yeah.
And his wife now has let Nelson show them, and I think that's...
something like this probably would have been forgotten if it wasn't brought up in pictures like this. I mean, there's a lot of people who don't know about this,
Well, I know that, and I realize that because that's what Nelson and I were talking about. Every 5 or 6 years we'd say we ought to have a gathering, and it just didn't get around, just didn't suit right. I mean, it just didn't suit him right, or it didn't suit the rest of us quite right. And along the line, we've been losing our members, and I'm pretty near gone myself.
But this is kind of something that probably should be kind of on a tour almost. I mean, pictures to take around to different libraries in the state, different universities, and just let them know what happened.
That's what we've been talking about. We could probably even make copies of them and not necessarily release the originals,
Right,
because you never know which idiot is going to decide it isn't worth it, and then they're going to destroy what they got.
Yeah.
Because those are the people that do destroy things.
Just think if there wasn't this protest in this county, what they would have done. I mean, they just thought they could come in and just roll through and roll out. And they did in some counties, didn't they?
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, yes. Was it Kalkaska? I think they just buried there without any kind of a...
Without any hearings or anything like that? Or?
That's right.
Wow.
The people were uninformed or didn't want to be informed or didn't think it would matter.
Yeah.
And so, well, I think it matters a lot, not just to myself, but to my children, my grandchildren,
Sure.
and great-grandchildren.
Yeah. Well, I think that Jim Davison, this was just part of his life. I mean, this is something that he lived and breathed, I think.
He did. He
You
did.
got these pictures there of the pit. I just don't understand
I know.
right here. You know, it's just a lot of people don't understand how big these pits were.
Well, there was only the one.
Yeah.
That we were able to. Hi.
Hi.
There was only the one pit because when we went into court, that is what ceased the proliferation. They were going to have 70 pits up there on Mount Tom.
Wow.
And if you can imagine what that would have done.
About the same size each pit?
Oh yeah, I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it. So what they did then was ship them out to Nevada, and I think Utah also, but I'm not positive about Utah, but I know Nevada was one of the recipients of a whole bunch of PBB infected cattle. And I don't know why those people accepted it, if they either didn't know about it or they're the people who were in charge of their communities didn't care either, or something. I don't know.
But you know, you got in contact with a lot of people who were kind of on your side, like Zoltan Ferenczi and people like that, who really understood what you're going through.
Yep, right. Yep. Well, I'll tell you, I'm glad it's over with. But I'll tell you something. I don't believe. I have to check with Nelson if they have. They did put in wells periodically around the pit, and they're supposed to check those every year or two.
Find out.
To see what the action was, and they did that for a couple of years, I believe, and I haven't heard that they've done it since.
Anymore?
And I knew one of the fellows in the DNR who we were in opposition with, and I talked with him at the Michigan Fair with I took my mother there, and he said that Mrs. Neff, you can't tell my name, and you can't tell my wife's name, but I will tell you this: my wife has got PBB poisoning and she's dying. And he says, and now I know why you were fighting this. I says, well, why don't you want everybody else to know this? I says, you should. This should be something everybody should know. So I don't even know if he's alive yet himself, because that was already probably nearly 20 years ago.
Wow.